Tom Hardy walks into Joe Rogan's studio already looking like he regrets saying yes. What starts out as a regular episode about movies and training slowly turns into a psychological duel over who is really in charge here: the actor, who is tired of being someone else's image of strength, or the host, who is used to believing that his curiosity is always for good reasons. By the end of the conversation, it becomes unclear where the interview ends and the battle for the right to tell the truth about oneself begins, and whose version will ultimately prevail. The episode that broke the internet was never supposed to air. By the time Joe Rogan said the one thing you never say to a man like Tom Hardy, the producers were already arguing in hand signals behind the glass. If you listen to the end, you might never hear another celebrity interview as harmless background noise again. Tom walked into the studio like a man who had already decided he regretted saying yes. Leather jacket, 3 days of beard, that half-smirk people loved to screenshot when they called him feral and charming in the same sentence. He shook Joe's hand, firm, brief, eyes already scanning the skulls in neon as if measuring the size of the cage. "You good?" Joe asked, that easy Texas warmth turned just a notch higher for the cameras. "Depends what you ask," Tom said, sliding into the chair, headphones hanging loose around his neck like an animal that hadn't decided if it would bite. The red on-air light glowed to life, and somewhere, a million people who would later swear they'd just stumbled on the clip pressed play. "All right, friends," Joe said, leaning into the mic, voice dropping into that familiar late-night register. "Today we've got Tom Hardy in the building, actor, chameleon, absolute madman in the best possible way. We're gonna talk violence, masculinity, whatever else comes up, and, we'll see if he chokes me out by the end." Tom's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Not my type, mate," he said. The audience would later replay that line like a warning nobody heard. At first, it was the show everyone expected. Joe asked about the early days, the odd jobs, the addiction story Tom had told enough times it felt like someone else's script. Tom played along, voice low, sometimes mumbling, sometimes suddenly sharp when he talked about clawing his way out of his own head. It sounded honest, but not dangerous. Danger came when Joe did what he always did: he pushed just a little further than the publicist-approved version of the story. "So you've played some, pretty violent guys," Joe said. "Cray twins, Bane, that dude in Bronson who spent half the movie naked and covered in blood. Bit of body paint, bit of theater," Tom said. "Comes off in the shower." "Yeah, but people watch those roles and they're like, that's real intensity, that's a real man," Joe mused. "You proud of that?" Tom's eyes lifted, slow, like a door on rusty hinges. "What, being a real man?" Joe smiled, sensing a moment. "Nah, I mean, like, you ever worry guys use your characters as an excuse? Like, if Tom Hardy does it, it's badass, you know?" Silence stretched just long enough to make the headphones feel heavier. Tom glanced toward the glass, where a publicist's silhouette was just visible. "You want me to apologize for other blokes now?" he asked. "I'm asking if you feel any responsibility," Joe said, still calm, still smiling. "I mean, cameras are on, millions of dudes listening." "Millions of dudes listening to you," Tom corrected. "I'm just visiting." The room shifted. Tiny things, a change in breathing, the creak of Joe's chair, but everyone could feel it. "Come on, man," Joe laughed. "You're the one people put on motivation reels. Say you don't care, they'll still carve your face into their brains when they're hitting the gym." Tom leaned forward, elbows on the table, tattoos shifting under the studio lights. "All right," he said quietly. "You want responsible? Let's be responsible." Joe's grin widened. He thought this was the part where the guest melts, opens up, gives the soulful quote that ends up in a compilation about vulnerable men. Instead, Tom turned his head, speaking more to the mic than to Joe. "You lot think sitting here is intimacy," he said. "Bit of lighting, long chat, couple of tears, boom, truth. But this is performance, same as the films." Joe's eyebrows rose. "Yeah, but it's honest performance," he countered. "People can smell fake." "Can they?" Tom asked. "Or do they just like the flavor of your fake better than someone else's?" Behind the glass, the producer mouthed something that looked a lot like, "Oh, shit." Joe shifted, just a little. "You think I'm fake?" I think you're a storyteller, Tom replied. Same as me. Difference is, when I put on a mask, nobody pretends it's my real face. In living rooms and cars, listeners leaned in closer. This was no longer a cozy chat about movie sets. Tom, you agreed to come on, Joe said, palms up even though no one could see. Nobody forced you. You're right, Tom nodded. My team thought it'd be good to show I'm, what was the word? Relatable. He tasted the word like something that had gone off. And you don't want that? Joe asked. Relatable men don't scare people, Tom said. My work's not supposed to make them comfy. But here you are, Joe replied, in the biggest comfy chair on the internet. Tom laughed once, no humor in it. Yeah. About that chair. He reached into his jacket and set a small, black recorder on the table, right next to Joe's mic. A little red light blinked back at them. Joe's smile faltered for the first time. You recording too? Been recording since the parking lot, Tom said. Insurance. Against what? Editing, Tom answered. Context. You take bits, they take bits, everyone chops until the only thing left is the headline. Behind the glass, the producer froze. This was not in the talking points. Look, man, we don't do hit pieces here, Joe said, laughing, but now it sounded thinner. We roll. People see the whole thing. Do they, though? Tom asked. Or do they see the clips their mates share with the spice turned up? He tapped the little recorder with one knuckle. This one's for when I tell the story my way. The comments would later split into camps, some calling Tom paranoid, others calling him the only sane man in a circus built out of microphones. In the studio, though, it was just two men and a growing pile of unspoken things between them. Okay, Joe said slowly. Since we're being real, let me ask you this. You ever play the tough guy so much you forget how to be anything else? Tom's jaw flexed. You ever play the wise man so much you forget you're just a comedian with a gym membership? The air crackled. All right, Joe said. So I'm fake, you're dangerous, and everybody listening is deluded. That about right? Tom considered him, then shook his head. No, he said. I think everyone's just scared, and some of us are louder about it. Something in Joe's face softened for half a second. It would have been the perfect place to breathe, to pivot, to find common ground. Instead, he went for the line that lit the fuse. If you're so scared, Joe said, why sign up to be a tough guy for a living? The sentence hit the table like a dropped weight. Behind the glass, the publicist's face went pale. Tom's eyes went flat. You think it's a costume, yeah, he said. I put it on, take it off, same as your headphones. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it sticks. His fingers drummed once on the recorder, once on the table, like he was deciding which reality to pick. Why are you really asking, Joe, he said. You worried about the lads who follow me, or the ones who follow you? The question hung there, heavier than anything said so far. For the first time, Joe didn't answer right away. He took a breath, stared at the skull on the shelf like it might give him a safer line. I worry, man, he said finally. About dudes who think we've got it all figured out, so they don't have to. They copy you, they copy me, and they never ask what's under it. Tom watched him, searching for the trap. When he didn't find one, his shoulders dropped a fraction. It was the smallest crack in the armor, and the moment the whole thing truly went off the rails. Because that was when the producer's voice cut into Joe's headphones. Sharp and urgent, ask about the leaked audio. Joe flinched, almost imperceptibly. Tom saw it. What did he just tell you? Tom asked, tilting his head. Joe hesitated, then did the thing nobody expected from the king of smooth segues. They want me to ask about that recording from set, he said. The one where you're shouting at the crew. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. You really want to go there on their orders? Tom asked quietly. Behind the glass, the producer waved frantically, but Tom wasn't looking at him anymore. He was looking at Joe, at the headphones, at the invisible hands on the volume knobs. "Here's your tough guy answer," he said, leaning in so close his breath hit the mic. "You lot think power is who talks the loudest on tape. Real power is who keeps the master." He tapped his little recorder again, once, like a gavel. "You don't own this moment, Joe. We both do." For a heartbeat, everything held. Then Joe did the only thing left that felt like he took off the headphones. "Cut it," he said to the glass. The red light died. Silence spilled into the room, suddenly real, suddenly unsellable. Tom sat back, eyes on Joe, then on the dead light above them. "You'll regret that," he said. Joe gave a tired half smile. "Maybe. But at least this part's just for us." Tom glanced at his recorder, still blinking, still hungry. He didn't turn it off. Later, nobody could agree on how the audio escaped the room. Some swore it came from Joe's people, others blamed Tom's camp, others said a tech walked out with the whole thing on a thumb drive and sold it for rent money. What they did agree on was this: the raw file didn't sound like an interview. It sounded like two different brands of fear arguing over who got to wear the word authentic. Listeners looped one section in particular. Joe's voice, steady but frayed, saying, "They copy you, they copy me, and they never ask what's under it." Tom's voice right after, lower, almost weary, "Maybe because we'd rather play characters than admit we don't know who we are without them." There was no neat wrap-up. No handshake, no joking selfie, no closing monologue. The leaked audio cut off right after Tom's last line, with the faint scrape of a chair and someone, no one knows who, exhaling like they'd been holding their breath for an hour. The internet did what it always does. It chose sides, made edits, turned the uncomfortable pauses into punchlines and manifestos. Some people canceled Joe, some canceled Tom, some canceled both and wrote long posts about parasocial masculinity and performance. But the part that stuck with the quiet listeners, the ones who played it alone in their cars or in cheap earbuds on late walks, was smaller. It was that half second of silence after Joe said, "Cut it," before the light went out. You can hear it if you turn the volume all the way up, a tiny, hovering moment where anything could still have been said, any truth could still have been chosen. Then the click. After this story, it's hard to forget that sound the next time you hear an interview. The little invisible moment where someone, somewhere, decides what the rest of us are allowed to hear.